I don't know about you, but anytime human lizard cyborg dead behind the eyes Zuckerberg takes an L, I'm pretty thrilled about it. And this week and the last few weeks have been L after L for one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters. Whenever you can have a member of the Epstein class get beat down, that's a plus. So what exactly happened in the case of Zuckerberg and Meta? Some of you might not remember this, but there was an initiative that Meta embarked on where they drafted a whole bunch of their employees and they installed essentially spyware on their computers. And that spyware installation was designed to monitor and track what all of their employees were doing in certain functions to help train Meta's AI. Now, obviously, employees weren't too happy about this. And they weren't happy about it due to a number of different factors. Obviously, the privacy concerns are there, but you also had this happening in a time frame where companies were laying people off left and right as they adopt more and more AI solutions. And what Zuckerberg and Meta did at the time was the modern day version of what happened during the outsourcing boom that happened in the late 80s and early 90s. You had employees who were terminated from their positions or greatly reduced in their role, having to train their foreign counterparts. And this is the same thing. Meta leadership, along with Zuckerberg, expected employees to train their AI replacements. Needless to say, that didn't go over well. And it didn't go over well in terms of a number of different ways. You had an internal revolt amongst the employees that was layered over the top of the sinking morale from all of the layoffs. So needless to say, no one was happy there. Even after all of that backlash, and even after the worker revolt, Zuckerberg doubled down and tripled down on the directive. And that drove even more discontent within the workforce. And what's interesting about all of this is that Meta's CTO swore up and down that data that was collected would be tightly controlled and there would be security baked in. And unfortunately, none of that actually came to fruition because there were leaks left and right and fallovers left and right from the AI. Now, even after all of that disaster, Meta sunk in $145 billion just in the last year to try to prop up their AI initiatives and their AI models. And now Meta's leadership has decided to put a hold on their employee spyware, employee tracking initiative that was being used to train their AI models because it's proven to not be secure and it's leaked information that shouldn't have been leaked, creating exposure for the company. Now let's understand what's going on. They're putting pause on it to reassess and see if they can fine-tune their way to a better solution so that they can re-implement this on the way out. But think about the organizational damage that's been caused. Now, Meta already has a terrible reputation when it comes to data security. When you want to look at many of the problems that we face in terms of who's in power today, you can trace that back to what Meta and Zuckerberg allowed from the perspective of Cambridge Analytica. If it were not for Meta, Trump would have never gotten elected. And Trump would have never gotten elected were it not for Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon paying Meta for access to user data. And when it comes to protecting user data, Meta's got a checkered past. They've been fined over and over again, which is a whole nother conversation that we can have. The fact of the matter is that Meta as an organization and under Zuckerberg's leadership is a horrible organization. When we think about some of the worst tech organizations out there, Meta is at the top of the list and should remain there for the foreseeable future. When you look at what Meta's done in terms of the social media landscape, a lot of what we see in the US in terms of social media consolidation and the TikTok acquisition was driven by Meta. Meta and its subsidiaries have realized that they can't compete in an innovation economy, so they're trying to do whatever they can to acquire or legislate their way towards a foothold. So when you see things like this happening, where Meta is taking an L, it should give us pause for at least some good news. But this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Meta. The fact of the matter is, when we take a look at what these tech companies are doing, Meta and others are using the same playbook. They're using their current employees to try to train their new AI models with the intent of replacing those employees with AI. And that is the posture that most business is taking going forward. And this is a posture that is not sustainable. So what that means is that workers at these organizations need to be much more deliberate in gumming up the works. They need to be much more active in exposing the dysfunction that happens within these organizations. None of these organizations are operating with the best interests of the worker in mind. All of these organizations are operating with the intent of replacing workers with automation and with AI. Employees of those companies shouldn't be so willing to take a paycheck to fund their own demise. Because if you continue business as usual within these organizations and you continue to train your replacements, you're taking payment for your own extinction.